Yeah, I don't really see what the big problem with the poster is. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, other than the fact that Zendaya's not on it, because I feel like she deserves to be. But other than that, I think it's pretty cool. I like the big spider symbol behind the characters. You know, it's got most of the main characters on it, and still not too busy. It's a hell of a lot better than that Spider-Man Homecoming mess. Can we agree on that? So anyways, yeah, this is my spoiler talk for Spider-Man Far From Home, since it's been out for quite a few days now. If you have not seen said Spider-Man movie and plan to see it, then you probably shouldn't be here. Unless you really don't care, in which case, why don't you care? Because Spider-Man's pretty awesome. Alright, you've been warned. So let's dive in. I'm gonna start this video out with some negatives because the beginning of the movie is the part I don't really like. Although I will say I did like that little slideshow, that in memoriam thing at the very beginning. I thought that was kind of funny because the images were just really bad images. Like low resolution pictures of like Vision, some candid photo of Tony Stark. I thought it was funny. But really my problem with the first part of the movie is the dialogue or the comedy, because I didn't really think most of it was funny. Like Peter's talking to Ned about his plan to win the heart of MJ during the trip. You know, he's gonna take her up to the top of the Eiffel Tower and give her this black dahlia flower necklace. Then MJ approaches them. She's like, what are you talking about? And they're like, we're talking about Peter's plan. She's like, you have a plan? And then Ned just comes up with some lame excuse. He's like, yeah, he's planning on collecting spoons. And he turns to Peter. He's like, I totally saved your ass. I was just like, oh my god, no. Like, come on, spoons. That's terrible. Again, I don't know. That kind of humor just doesn't gel with me because I don't see it as funny. I just see it as, that's a stupid lie. That's all I see it as. However, one thing this movie never explained is what happened to Spider-Man's AI that he had in Homecoming. You know, Karen. I actually thought Karen was pretty cool in Homecoming, but she was just nowhere in Infinity War or Endgame or Far From Home. And I get that, yeah, Spider-Man having an AI kind of made him a little too much like Iron Man. I guess that would be my reasoning for why they decided to get rid of Karen. But they never gave a story-based reason for it in the movies. But we do have another AI in this movie. We have Edith, which I love the fact that Edith stands for Even Dead, I'm the Hero. That Tony Stark and his acronyms. You know, Jarvis stood for just a rather very intelligent system. True story. But yeah, anyway, we have these Edith sunglasses now that Nick Fury gives Peter when he's on vacation. He takes Peter in and he's in his, you know, regular Spider-Man suit with the red and blue. And he gets to meet everyone. It's like this kind of pseudo-shield underground. It's got that dude, Dimitri, who looks like some assassin. It's got Maria Hill, played by How I Met Your Mother's Kobe Smulders. And that's where we get to formally meet Mr. Quentin Beck. And right when he was talking about, oh, I was from another Earth and the elementals destroyed my planet and they killed my family, and he's got this ring on his finger, I immediately was like, alright, so he's bullshitting through his teeth. I never bought it for 1 second. My brother and I, we were watching it, and we were just like, yeah, alright, this is crap. I mean, we all suspected that Mysterio would be the villain of the movie since, you know, he's Mysterio, who is known in the comics for being a Spider-Man villain, and that's what I wanted, you know? I wanted, like, when they were advertising Mysterio as a good guy, I was like, I don't like that, I hope he's the villain. But then we all suspected, yeah, he's probably going to turn up being the villain, because they didn't really advertise anyone else, any other real villain in the movie. I mean, yeah, you had those monsters, but those wouldn't be a real good villain. I feel like no one bought it. I feel like everyone was like, yeah, Mysterio's the villain. Sure enough, man, after that bar scene where Peter is like, you know what? I'm gonna give you Edith because you're more fit to use her than I am. And then Peter leaves the bar, and you see the hologram come up, and it zooms in on Jake Gyllenhaal, and you see that smug, like, smile come on his face. I was like, alright, here we go. Now we're gonna find out what his real deal is. He's giving this toast to all of his subordinates, who are all really disgraced ex-Stark employees, which I think is great because a while ago, we were told to keep an eye on that barf technology from Civil War. Someone, I think it might have been Kevin Feige or maybe even the Russo brothers, one of them was like, yeah, keep an eye on that barf technology because it's gonna come back in a future movie. We all suspected it would be like Endgame or Infinity War or something. Nope, it's Far From Home. Turns out that Quentin Beck was the one who originally designed that technology, and Tony Stark just kind of stole the idea from him and renamed it BARF, binarily augmented retro framing. So really, that technology is Mysterio's, like, power. His real power. That's what he uses to create the illusion of all this elemental stuff and his costume and his powers. It's all that barf technology, which I think is a really cool twist. And you see that among his subordinates is that William dude from the original Iron Man movie from 2008. You know, the one in that one scene from that movie that we actually remember where Jeff Bridges is just yelling at him, which is kind of funny. The fact that they showed that scene in this movie, I was like, why did they show that? Just to show the audience that, yeah, it's the same guy. But really, there was no reason to show that clip in this movie. And plus, now we have a character that was in the very first movie in the Infinity Saga and the very last movie in the Infinity Saga, and none of the other movies in between. I don't know, I just think that's pretty funny. Oh, and just a little side note here, I noticed that there was no Stan Lee cameo in this movie. I thought there was gonna be one, but there wasn't. I don't know, I thought about that and I got sad. It makes me sad that from now, for the rest of eternity, whatever Marvel movies come out, there's just not gonna be any more Stan Lee cameos. Ever. That just makes me really sad. I'm really sorry if I made you cry just now, but just know that I'm with you on that, alright? We'll get through this together. On a brighter note, let's talk about Peter and MJ for a bit. Like I said, any scene that focused on just the two of them, they just made me smile because they're both so shy and awkward around each other. It was just so cute to see. However, I do stand by what I said about this scene in particular. The scene where MJ reveals that, yeah, I know you're Spider-Man. I still think that scene should not have been in the trailer. It would have been so much funnier just if we had not known about it. So when she says, hey, I know you're Spider-Man, we just would have been like, wait, what the fuck? And the fact that she says, I've been watching you for a while now, it kind of makes her sound kind of creepy. I mean, put yourself in Peter's shoes. If the girl you like tells you that she's been watching you for a while, how would you react to that? What would you really think? I'm actually kind of curious about that. So whatever your answer to that question is, go ahead and leave a comment on that. If I'm being completely honest, I probably would have been fine with it because I'm super mega attracted to Zendaya. But then that becomes a scene where they find out that Mysterio is a fraud because Zendaya found that piece of tech, that projector from the drone, and it goes off and it shows this elemental hologram and it shows Mysterio fighting it, and she and Peter are like, oh my god, Mysterio's a fraud. And alright, I'm gonna talk about this scene that seems trivial in the movie, but I gotta talk about this scene in particular. It's a scene where Peter is in his stealth suit and MJ is in there and Ned is also in there. He's gonna go confront Quentin Beck and he looks at MJ and he says, don't tell anyone. Anyone who knows is in danger. And then he puts down his eyes and he swings off. I was like, that is such a Spider-Man moment right there. Because really, it took me back to the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man because I think there was a moment in one of those movies that was just like that. Yeah, I think it was the second movie. Or it could have been the third. You know what? I think it was actually the third one. But I don't even care. It was still a cool moment where Tobey Maguire, he's in his apartment with MJ and he's got his spider suit on except for the mask. And he's right next to the window. He smiles at MJ, puts on the mask, and then swings off. I don't know, this moment in Far From Home really reminded me of that moment. I was like, yeah, that's my kind of Spider-Man moment. I don't know, just whenever I see that moment in this movie, I get giddy. I'm like, Spider-Man. Because really, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is the Spider-Man that I grew up with. That's the Spider-Man from my childhood. So the fact that we have a scene in this movie that takes me back to my childhood, that's an instant plus right there. But of course, we gotta talk about the biggest plus in this movie, and it's a scene that just blew my hair back. I'm pretty sure you know the scene I'm about to talk about. Yeah, it's the big Mysterio illusion scene. Holy mother of God, that scene was awesome! Spider-Man thinks he's talking to Nick Fury, and then he's like, wait a minute, I sense that Quentin Beck is here. And right there, the illusion kind of unmasks itself, but not really. You just see everything go black, and then you see this hallway, you see the lights come down, and then you see Mysterio walking down the hallway. I looked at my brother, and we were both just like, oh my god, it's about to go down. This is what I wanted to see from a live-action Mysterio. Just make Spider-Man trip all sorts of balls, and that's what he does. And it just kept going, too. Like, all of a sudden, he's on top of the Eiffel Tower, and he sees MJ, and then the moon behind MJ becomes Mysterio's globe. Although there is one part of the sequence that I felt the visuals could have been cleaned up a bit. It's the part where he's surrounded by all these mirrors, and then he touches his reflection, and then all these other, like, Spider-Men come and just dogpile on him. That's where I was like, yeah, alright, those could be cleaned up a lot, because they just look too smooth. You hear Quentin Beck in the background during this whole scene. He's like, you don't know what's real. You just a kid in a sweatsuit. And he's like, I control the truth. Mysterio is the truth. And the way his voice kind of distorts at that line, I was like, yeah, alright, awesome. That's a Mysterio thing. And then he tries to make him feel guilty by saying if it weren't for you, Tony Stark would still be alive. And then you see like this zombie Iron Man suit fly out of the ground, and then it's like a half mask, half skull. Then the spider jumps out and then its eyes become a whole bunch of Mysterios. Throughout this entire scene, I was just staring at the screen in like disbelief with my jaw on the floor. The best part was towards the very end, when it seems that he's like trapped in this snow globe with all these buildings around him, and then it becomes Mysterio's head and he lifts it off of his shoulders. I was hoping that would happen in this movie because that's a big Mysterio trick that's been around for decades, where he takes his globe off of his shoulders. It's like he doesn't have a head. Because that's one I've always been like, how the fuck does he do that? So I was glad that was featured in this movie. I've heard some people say that this whole illusion sequence is like one of the best scenes in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe so far. And you know what? I have to agree. Like, yeah, the big climactic fight at the end of Endgame with all of the characters, that was awesome too. That's probably still one of the best, but I'm just saying, this big Mysterio illusion scene is something I've wanted to see for years. Since I was a little kid watching the 90s Spider-Man cartoon on DVD. Honestly, in my fantasy, get Mysterio and Doctor Strange in a room together and just let them just unleash all their magic. I know that's probably never gonna happen, but I would die happy. It would just be the most visually orgasmic scene in any movie ever. I'm just saying. So the big final action scene of this movie is in London. Quentin Beck's got this whole big thing planned with the giant elemental, and Peter Parker goes over there to stop him. Actually, I gotta talk about the scene on the jet, because that was a really good scene. You know, he's like programming all this Stark tech, and Happy Hogan cues up the AC/DC. I was like, oh man, we're just totally throwing back to Iron Man here. Because you see Peter Parker, you know, messing with these holograms, and the look on Happy Hogan's face, I was just like, look at that kid go. And I love when Happy says, you take care of the suit, I'll take care of the music. That's when he cues up the AC/DC. I was like, man, oh man, that is good vibes right there. And sure enough. That was just a great scene. And he makes his new black and red Spider-Man suit, which I think is completely badass. And so he parachutes into this cyclone, and so when he goes inside the cyclone and he sees all these drones and all these colored lights around him, I was like, yep, this is still like straight up Mysterio vibes here. Although I gotta say, that scene where he just rounds up all the drones, you know, he puts that one web between the two structures on the bridge, and he rounds them all up, and he does a flip, and he lands on the ground with that Spider-Man landing pose. I was just like, yes! I don't care what anyone says. That is the most badass Spider-Man action scene I have seen in years. I am telling you that with a straight face without blinking an eyelash. So he confronts Quentin Beck in this tower bridge, whatever it is. And so Quentin Beck puts on these holograms again, and so he, like, the entire place just goes black, and there's this green mist on the ground. I was like, alright, are we in for another badass illusion scene? It wasn't really, but it was like half of one. And you see Spider-Man shut his eyes, and he's using his, like, Peter Tingle, which I hate that they called it that. Like, why can't we just call it the Spider Sense? That's what it is. That's what it's called. That's what everyone knows it as. I'm just gonna call it that because Peter Tingle is stupid. So he uses his Spider Sense, and he jumps off the wall and takes out all these drones. I was like, yep, that's Spider-Man being a badass against Mysterio, who's a badass. But you see one of the drones accidentally shoots Quentin Beck, so he's laying on the ground, Peter's standing above him. And then all of a sudden you just hear this gun go off and you see Peter go boom! He catches the gun that Quentin Beck was actually standing right there next to him. He was about to shoot him in the head. I was like, holy shit. And you see Peter, he's like, you can't trick me anymore, Beck. That is, come on. You can't get much more badass than that. You just can't. But then yeah, it looks like Mysterio actually dies, which some people have said maybe he's not dead. I don't really know what to think. I mean, he looked pretty dead to me. And Peter even confirms it with Edith. He's like, is this real? And Edith is like, all illusions are down. I mean, he could have read his vitals to be sure. You know, see if he could have detected a heartbeat. That's what I would have done. So really, I don't know if Mysterio is truly dead or not. I mean, it would be pretty awesome if he came back because we just get more Mysterio scenes. Maybe for this whole Sinister Six that I don't even know if they're setting up anymore. But then we get to the scene on the bridge with Peter and MJ. Yeah, this scene, man. Again, me being a sucker for the Peter and MJ scenes in the movie. MJ pulls out the necklace that Peter was gonna give her. And Peter's like, oh man, I had this plan. I was gonna give you this on the Eiffel Tower. And then she just kisses him out of nowhere, which is funny because she made the first move there. And it was right there that I noticed, oh my, wow, she's taller than him. I mean, that's not a bad thing. I mean, actually, good for Peter. And yeah, I was happy they finally do get to kiss in this movie, and I was like, yay! But at the same time, it looked kind of awkward to me because they're kind of leaning in towards each other instead of like embracing like people usually do when they kiss. I'm speaking from experience here. But no, they're just standing like a foot apart, and then they lean towards each other, and then they embrace. It was like their own shy, awkward version of the kissing scene. But it was cute nonetheless. And I love how this movie ends, with Peter taking MJ on a swing date. Like, MJ was totally down to try swinging around the city with Peter Parker. Which, yeah, now we finally have a scene. It's been so long since we've had a scene of just Spider-Man swinging throughout the New York City skyscrapers. Right when that came on at the end of the movie, I was like, oh my god, thank you once again for bringing me back to the Raimi movies. And so he takes MJ swinging, and she hates it. She's just screaming her ass off, which I think was in one of the TV spots where she was like, yeah, I'm never doing that again. None of us knew at the time that that was actually part of the mid-credits scene. The mid-credits scene in this movie is actually great, because this breaking news thing comes on one of the buildings or whatever, and it shows that Mysterio had a contingency plan. He has released a video framing Spider-Man of killing him, making Spider-Man look like a bad guy, which would be bad enough, you know, I mean, Spider-Man has been slandered in lore before, it's nothing new. But then, you see Quentin Beck, he's talking right to the camera, he's like, Spider-Man's real name is Peter Parker! And then you just see a picture of Peter Parker on the screen, I was like, holy shit! No! I was with Spider-Man, I was like, what the fuck? That is so bad! Oh my god, is everyone just gonna be hating on this kid now? He can't even show his face in public again! He's screwed! Oh, and the fact that you see J.K. Simmons reprising his role as J. Jonah Jameson? The bummer is I spoiled that for myself before I saw this movie. I went down the rabbit hole and I had to see the mid-credits. I didn't watch the mid-credits scene like a bootleg or anything, I saw that J.K. Simmons was reprising his role as J. Jonah Jameson. Yeah, I have myself to blame on that one, but I didn't know what he did. I didn't know his hair was gonna be different. I honestly probably would have preferred that he kept the flat top from the Raimi movies, but I don't even care. Again, it's like they knew, yeah, sometimes you just get it right the first time. J.K. Simmons is one of the best parts of the Raimi movies. He is hilarious as J. Jonah Jameson. I hope this goes past just being a cameo. Like, I want to see more of him in the later movies to come, whatever those might be. I just love that mid-credits scene. It was great. The post-credits scene is controversial. That's the word I can use to describe it. Because it reveals that Nick Fury and Maria Hill were, all this time, they were Talos from Captain Marvel and his wife Soren. They were the Skrulls, man. I was like, alright, you know, that doesn't really affect the story of the movie at all because Nick Fury was still being Nick Fury, how we know Nick Fury to be. And you see the actual Nick Fury, he's up on a spaceship somewhere, like he's on a vacation himself. I was like, is this supposed to be teasing for something? Maybe the next Captain Marvel movie? It shows that the Skrulls are still kicking. Apparently Talos hasn't aged at all since 95. But in the end, I thought Spider-Man Far From Home was a completely badass movie. Yeah, it had flaws for sure. I didn't really like the first third of the movie because it was dumb high school comedy stuff. But the badass stuff in this film I thought was completely badass. It overshadowed all the things I didn't like. Like, yeah, even movies I give my top rating, they still are allowed to have flaws. I mean, did I like this movie as much as Endgame? No. But honestly, this movie really surprised me because I was not expecting to like it as much as I did. And so that's a big plus right there. And as far as the Marvel Cinematic Universe goes, we are in a rare spot where we don't know what's coming next. I mean, we know some rumored movies that are coming, you know, Black Widow movie has been shooting that might be coming next. I don't know. And again, since that character is officially dead, or supposed to be dead anyway, she is dead. I don't know how much this Black Widow movie is gonna matter at all. But then there are the other rumored movies that Marvel Studios is supposedly doing, like the Eternals or Shang-Chi. Of course, you know, we gotta have sequels to Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange, and Black Panther. And of course, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I don't know, we'll see what happens. I can't really say much about it until they're actually confirmed and we see trailers and, you know, we're closer to those movies. But for now, though, bring on those Disney Plus shows. They are what I'm looking forward to the most from the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this point. And Cloak and Dagger Season 3. Still unconfirmed. Please, let's make that happen. Alright, enough rambling. Spider-Man Far From Home. What was your favorite scene? And also, what do you think of this whole Marvel Cinematic Universe situation we're in right now? And again, what would you think if the girl you like told you that she's been watching you for a while? Whatever you think about any of those questions, go ahead and leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe.